Man, there are so many things that I need to talk to y'all about. I hated that I had to wait this long to be able to talk to y'all about it. And I hate that I had to push the show back because Ron Rivera just jumped on the mic and I needed to hear what he had to say in real time. I could have went back and watched it, but I wanted to hear what he had to say in real time. So I had a hell of a weekend. There's a lot that transpired over the weekend. There's a lot that has happened. Teams are in camp now, and by the week's end, all 32 teams will be in camp. So we've got news all over the place. Some news that we haven't had a chance to react to. There's so much. So without any further ado, you are locked in the 351st installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 351st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. First things first, I want to send a huge shout out to everyone who wished me well on my born day over the weekend on Sunday. It was an excellent birthday weekend. So many things transpired leading up to the birthday that made it even sweeter. Obviously, the sale of the team was at the top of that list. My wife treated me like an absolute king. And so we had friends come in town. We had someone else come over. It was a great time. I literally drank from Thursday when you guys saw me with the announcement of the sale going through till Sunday. All right, literally, it was like just one big drink, if you will. I'm actually proud of how my body held up, given the circumstances. One of those things you realize very quickly as you get into these situations is that you are not young anymore. All right. Now, mentally, I can still go toe to toe, flow for flow with the best of them. All right. I can go. I can go. I can flow toe to toe. But your body's like, you sure about that? Anyway, it was an excellent weekend. I want to thank 4 individuals in particular. My wife reached out, and Rico from Street Scores, my guy Mega 412, Miss Perry, and Rich all sent me messages, either video or audio, just wishing me a happy birthday, and it made my day. It was really, really touching, and I appreciate that. So shout out to all of you for making it a special birthday. And there was some drama over the weekend with the NFL and these running backs. We've been talking about these running backs quite a bit on this podcast. I have a feeling we're going to, take a step back from them because now the lens widens as everyone hits camp and there are more storylines and different things to talk about. So we don't have to focus in on this topic as much. But let's put a bow on it. And I think it came to a head over the weekend. So without any further ado, let's jump into the gem dropping session today. Shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So the running backs had a Zoom call. And this is not something that happens on a regular basis. Like the best players at a single position generally don't band together and try to figure out a way to up their market value. Try to figure out ways to get fair treatment for their position in particular. You know, the closest thing I think we've seen to something like that, and it's not really, you know, because it's all encompassing. I think they probably do have conversations with some of these guys, but the tight end right, the tight end university thing that we saw from Kittle, Olsen, and Kelsey that they do every year, and I think they've been doing it now 3 years or so. That's the closest thing we've seen to something like this, where you're actually sharing, you know, secrets of the trade, making sure guys understand their importance in the growth of the position, meaning you can't take less for the sake of the position because the next man won't benefit if you don't take as much as you can get. So the running back position has been taking a beating of late, and this has been a problem that I feel like has been bubbling like right under the surface for quite a while now, honestly speaking. And we've been having this conversation for the better part of a decade. So this is not new that running backs have felt devalued. The problem is you could rationalize it before by just saying, hey, there are no dynamic backs. There was a period there where there weren't those backs that were game changers necessarily. So you could make the argument, there's really nothing here to pay. There's no guy, you know, but that's changed. The running back position is dynamic again. There are guys that impact the game, and yet the running back position is running backwards. I saw a tweet, had to be over the weekend. Somebody broke it down eloquently, and it was mind-boggling to see it. And it was something to the effect of like quarterback franchise tag, wide receiver franchise tag, running back franchise tag, and how it has changed over the last, let's call it 7 years. It might have been a decade, but let's call it 7 years. And it said quarterback franchise tag 7 years ago, $20 million. Franchise tag today, $32 million. Wide receiver franchise tag, like $12 million 7 years ago. It's like $19 million now. Running back franchise tag was 10-6 back in, you know, or 7 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. It's now 10-2. It's gone down. How is that possible? It doesn't even make sense with inflation and the adjustment of the cap and it going up almost every single year, except for that COVID year where it went down, but it's gone up exponentially over the last 2 years in particular, and it's going to continue to rise with all the TV money that's flooding in, and it's gone backwards? Are you kidding me? These running backs have every right to be upset. So these running backs had a Zoom call. It was spearheaded by disgruntled Chargers running back Austin Eckler, who, as we all know, we talked about this during the offseason, wanted out of Los Angeles not because he didn't want to be there, but because he felt like he was underpaid for what he's produced for them. They weren't going to pay him any more money than what was left on his contract. He demanded a trade. They said, hey, go find a trade. We don't mind. Go look. Obviously, there were no takers. And so he stuck. And so on this Zoom call, listen to the names on this thing. Saquon Barkley, obviously. Derrick Henry. Josh Jacobs. Jonathan Taylor. Christian McCaffrey. Tony Pollard. Nick Chubb. Najee Harris. Aaron Jones. Joe Mixon. J.K. Dobbins. Now, J.K. Dobbins, I don't really think belongs on this call if we're keeping it a buck, but he's a young back. If he proves to be dynamic, we'll see. The injury kind of derailed his rise in the league. We'll see if he's fully back this year and if he can kind of cement himself as the guy that belongs on this call. But can we take a step away from the call for a second and say, if you weren't included in this call, don't you feel some type of way? Isn't that a sign that you're not viewed as one of the top backs in the league? I don't know. Anyway, I digress. How about, I know you guys saw this. How about Joe Mixon taking a massive pay cut? A massive pay cut to stay in Cincinnati. Like, shout out to Joe Mixon first and foremost for understanding the landscape and the climate, and understanding that if he got cut, because they only come to you to take a pay cut if they're willing to part ways with you if you say no. Unless you're like the Chiefs went to Tyreek Hill like 3 years ago and said, hey, man, you want to restructure? He's like, hell no. They're like, okay. And they went away. That's rare. Okay. Generally speaking, if they come to you and they ask you to restructure or take a pay cut and you say no, they're prepared to cut you. That's why they're going to you. You really have two options. Either you can say yes and stay, or you can say no and go. So Joe knew if he said no, he was gone. And it was on to the next, on to the next one. And the problem with Joe is what is his value? There's a long line outside of veteran running backs waiting to get signed. A long line. Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook. I can continue to go on and on. There's a long line outside of veteran backs. Melvin Gordon just got plucked out of that line. It's a long line outside. And Joe Mixon, unlike Dalvin Cook, and me and my buddy were having a conversation about Josh Jacobs. And he said, you know, Josh Jacobs is playing a dangerous game. What if he gets released? I said, well, if he gets released, like if they rescind the franchise tag, guess what? He goes straight to the front of that line. He says, even in front of Dalvin Cook. I said, damn right, in front of Dalvin Cook. Josh Jacobs is a bigger and better commodity than Dalvin Cook is. Cook is 27. If I'm not mistaken, he's about to turn 28 in August. I could be wrong about that. Meanwhile, Josh Jacobs just turned 25 in February. Like, he's literally 25. He's really 25. Okay. So it's really not even a debate between the two. And so the difference there, if Joe Mixon gets released, I don't know where he goes in that line. He could go all the way to the back of that line. Nobody's checking for Joe Mixon. So Joe knew better. And that's part of the problem with these running backs, is they don't have any leverage. So on this conference call, on this Zoom call, one of the topics that was brought up was, how can we create leverage? And one of the things suggested, reportedly, I don't know if this actually happened or not, but reportedly, one of the things that came up was taking an injury and exacerbating it. Meaning, hey, I sprained my ankle. I could probably be back, hell, even next week. But I'm going to just let this thing linger for 3 weeks and make sure I'm totally healthy instead. Maybe a month I'll sit out. And while on one hand, keeps tread on the tires, makes you a productive back longer, because one of the things running backs, and look, anybody that plays football can make this claim, but you put your body on the line, and a lot of times, often, you're injured, but you play hurt, you sacrifice for the good of the team. And that energy isn't always reciprocated when it comes time for contracts. They just start to look at the numbers. Well, hey, you didn't perform at this level this year. And you're like, bro, you know I was playing through a torn labrum. You know that. Why are you even coming at me like that? But these running backs are like, hey, you know, maybe we need to show them we ain't playing. And while I hear you, that actually is counterproductive to what you need to be doing in order to get your bread, right? Because one of the problems with the position, why people don't like investing in the position, is because it's an injury-prone position, you know, and there isn't a lot of value in paying guys that you don't know if you're going to have them for more than a 5 or 6 year stretch where they're at their peak. Part of the problem with running backs is they get worn down quickly due to the high usage rate. So you faking an injury or even exacerbating an injury, all that's doing is the one thing that they're already claiming anyway, which is showing that you're indispensable. Next man up. And if that next guy comes in, gives them solid production, it makes you look like you're dispensable, right? You're trying to show that you're indispensable, that you need to pay me. I'm dynamic. I'm different. You being out of the lineup gives another guy an opportunity, like Isaiah Pacheco last year as a 7th round pick, to show he's fully capable. Or an undrafted running back like a James Robinson to come out of nowhere and show that he's fully capable of playing in the NFL and making a running back that might have been a 2nd round pick or a 3rd or even a 1st round pick, to show that, hey, you don't necessarily need him. You don't have to pay him big money. The next man can get the job done. So that actually works against them, right? They're in a tough spot. Running backs really don't have any leverage. And if I'm a running back, honestly speaking, I don't want to be selected in the 1st round. Being selected in the 1st round as a running back to me is a death sentence, because all you've done effectively is given the team an extra year. Now, depending on where you're selected, that 5th year, it's guaranteed money. It might be more than the team is willing to pay, all of that good stuff. But if they're going to franchise tag you, it's the same thing. It might even be less than the franchise tag, depending on where you're selected. The higher you're selected, the more money it is, then a decision has to be made. But the further back in the 1st round you're taking, it's less money. It might be worth it to just take a 1st round running back if he's really good, keep him for 5 years, and then franchise him 1 year after that, and then keep it pushing. And I much rather get to the bag faster if I'm a running back. Don't take me in the 1st round. Take me in the 2nd round. 4 years of service. There's no 5th year option. You want to franchise tag me, go right ahead after that 1st year. And I'm still, if I come out of college at 22 years old, you get me for 4 years, you franchise me, I'm still 27 at the end of that deal. I still can get to the bag at least once. But that's the problem with the running back position is it's no country for old men. It's not like it used to be where you could play until you were 35 years old. How old was John Riggins when he retired? How old was, Adrian? Well, Adrian Peterson is the exception to the rule, right? But I mean, there's so many running backs that lasted well into their 30s and were, really productive backs. Emmitt Smith, I mean, and we're talking about some of the greatest of all time, Jerome Bettis. We're talking about some of the best to ever do it, but it was a different era. Running backs had a ton of wear and tear on them, but they also lasted a lot longer. Teams were a lot more devoted to the position and willing to pay these bell cow backs. Because it's more of a passing league, because teams view the running back position as a dime a dozen, and because it's more of a split duty, sometimes a 3-headed monster, and there's rarely a guy that can handle the load by himself, it's tough to get what you deserve. I feel for that position. Honestly, you've got to be like an Alvin Kamara or a Christian McCaffrey to get to the bag. Aaron Jones, like those guys have been paid, and those teams will see the fruits of their labor, and those teams will get what they invested in. They'll get the dividends on the back end, because those guys not only are dynamic runners, they also can catch it. And if you don't come equipped with the ability to do both, you're probably not going to see that payday the way that you probably should. And so a lot of the guys like Jonathan Taylor, for instance, I think Indy will pay him, but it's easy to not pay a Jonathan Taylor because you can find another guy that can do some of those things, right? That's what these GMs are telling themselves. That's how these teams are operating. Now, it's hard to replace a Matt Forte or an Arian Foster, as we saw the position kind of change with these guys that could catch it out of the backfield and be really dynamic as pass catchers. And we've seen that era kind of ushered in with guys like that. Really, Matt Forte was, and LaDainian Tomlinson were those guys that kind of ushered in that new form of back, not just the guy that could tote the rock 25, 30 times in a game, but the guy that could tote the rock 22, 23 times and catch it 6, 7, 8 times out of the backfield as well and be a mismatch out of the backfield. And we've seen this new breed of back be so dynamic in that regard. Those are the guys getting paid. But a guy like Nick Chubb, who just got, a contract not too long from the Browns, not too long ago, but a guy like Nick Chubb isn't appreciated. Like when we talk about best backs in the league, how many times does Nick Chubb's name come up in the first 3 or 4 names? It should, but a lot of times it doesn't. Why? Because he's not a prolific pass catcher. You'll rattle off Christian McCaffrey. You'll rattle off Alvin Kamara. Some of these guys don't even play full 16-game slates. There was a stretch there where Christian McCaffrey didn't play for like 2 years, really. And still, his name would get brought up as one of the top backs in the league. Dalvin Cook, 2 years ago, was one of the top backs in football. He's not even on a roster right now. And we asked the Vikings, hey, why you cut Dalvin? And they still don't have it. They're still paying him. Why did you cut him? They still don't have an answer. So, running back position is really weird. I feel for those guys. They don't have any leverage, though. When it's all said and done, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And you still got to survive. You got to do what's best for you and your family as much as and I asked you on the podcast the last episode, who's going to be the martyr? Because it takes a strong individual mentally to be a martyr, to stand up for what you believe is right, no matter what the consequences are. To this day, Colin Kaepernick is still trying to get into the NFL. He was a martyr. He is not getting back in. He has been blackballed. Okay? He is not getting back into the NFL. He suffered the ultimate price in terms of his career so that hopefully others wouldn't have to go through potentially what he did or affecting change in the league with all these social justice initiatives. But it came at the expense of his career. Are you mentally tough enough to say, I'm going to sacrifice on the behalf of my brethren? I doubt it. Because at the end of the day, you got to get your bread. And I told you, I said, Saquon isn't the face of this movement here. He's not the guy. Saquon isn't that dude. Josh Jacobs is. Okay, he's about that life. I told you, I said, Saquon is not going to miss camp with the Giants. He's not built that way. Lo and behold, Saquon reaches a 1-year, $11 million deal, $2 million signing bonus. Incentives in there can kick the deal up slightly more. When they said that the Giants were $1 or $2 million away, per year on getting the deal done, I believe them because the franchise tag is 10-2, I think, for running backs. He got an $11 million deal. Like, it's not that much more than him just signing his name. Now, what he also probably did in this 1-year deal was also force the Giants to agree to not franchise tag him again next year, which is smart on his part, right? Don't do this shit to me again next year. I don't want to go through this song and dance. If you're not going to pay me, let somebody else that wants to pay me, pay me. So smart on Saquon's part. I assume the Raiders are going to do something like this, but the Raiders are dum-dums. The Raiders have had this mindless, directionless offseason. They still don't know what the hell they're doing. They just signed Marcus Peters. They have no idea what's going on in Vegas right now. They're trying to still figure shit out. And so they're under the impression that Josh Jacobs, he'll show up sometime before week 1. Like, they're not even tripping. Oh, yeah, he'll show up. They would have a rude awakening if he said, nah, I'm good, which he's not. Because, again, he's got to get to the bag. I can't sit out. Again, it's counterproductive to sit out a year. You're a year older. You're going to have the same contractual situation next year because your year of service does not accrue if you don't play. So you'll be right back in this situation as a free agent, but with the ability to be franchise tagged again. So it doesn't benefit you to sit out if you're a running back. But it's an interesting dynamic because Christian McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, and I feel like Josh Jacobs can catch it out of the backfield. Like those guys aren't going to really, I don't think, going to find themselves in the same rut. Like these running backs, like McCaffrey just got paid. Will he get paid again? Maybe, maybe not. Just depends on how he ages, how he's able to stay healthy. Is he still catching the ball at a high clip? Aaron Jones just got broken off by Green Bay. And a lot of us didn't think he would. But the Packers, they know he's not just a running back. He can catch it out of the backfield too. And there's value in that. Yeah. But these guys that are, strictly first and second down backs, those are the guys that are going to find it hard to get paid. Those are the guys that are going to find it tough. This Zoom call accomplished nothing other than showing unity, and I like that. Hey, we got to figure some shit out, fellas. Now, but them banding together this way shows the rest of the NFL that, hey, they've taken notice, and while it may not affect change now, if they continue to have these conversations, they may have one or two things they can put in for the next CBA, or they may have this or that they can tell these guys, hey, when you're looking to sign a deal, make sure your agent puts this in the deal. Like they may be able to come to a realization on some things that may allow their position to grow financially. So I don't think they need to disband this. I don't know if they'll continue to do it or not. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to social media maneuvers. I got a lot here for you guys as well, and a lot of you have probably seen these. But anyway, I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. So I talked about this last week. Let's reiterate this real quick. Saquon Barkley signed a 1-year, $11 million deal, $2 million signing bonus with the New York Giants. This is a deal that allows him to be a free agent next year, unrestricted, no strings attached. Also, a little bit higher than the actual franchise tag, which was 10 point some odd million dollars. So slightly more money for Saquon, but not that much more money for Saquon. But I think that the biggest part of this deal, which made it make more sense for him, was getting that assurance that you couldn't franchise tag me again next year. That's the big part of that. So I'm pretty sure y'all have seen this, and this social media maneuvers will act as, and let me go ahead and put this out there. If you're out there, you want your comment to be read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent. Now, if time permits, we will get to your comments. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to go about that. That jumps you straight to the front of the line, and then we will go from there. So Zach Martin, we talked about this last week, not happy with his contract in Dallas. And he said he was willing to, sit out of camp for as long as it takes to get the deal done. Now, I'm still kind of leery on how this all works, because when the new CBA was put in a couple of years ago, it was supposed to eliminate the disgruntled player who wanted to sit out of camp, because you incurred fines every day for sitting out, and the team wasn't allowed to just remove those fines. So I don't know what's being done or how these situations are, being handled. But for instance, Nick Bosa not at camp with the 49ers. They're well aware of the situation. They're in contact with him. They're working on a new deal as we speak, but he's not at camp. Well, that's actually that's an infraction in the CBA. Zach Martin not happy with his deal in Dallas. He's their best offensive lineman. Not in camp right now as it gets underway. He's making a statement. Speaking of which, I told you the Cowboys had a list of players that they were looking to get deals done with this offseason. Zach Martin's name not on the list. And he was unhappy and upset with the fact that they weren't even looking to come to the table with him. They wouldn't even sit down and have a conversation. They're like, look, we got other guys to take care of. You're not on the list. Wait your turn. And he's like, oh, that's how we going to play it? All right. So Trayvon Diggs was on the list of players that the Cowboys wanted to negotiate with this offseason. And that they did. Cowboys reached a 5-year, $97 million deal with Trayvon Diggs to lock him up for the foreseeable future as their number one corner. And so that was something they wanted to get done, and they did. CeeDee Lamb is probably up next, I would assume, and they'll continue to try to knock these guys down one by one. But Zach Martin not at camp. That is a ongoing storyline that we will keep an eye on because, again, he is the linchpin of that offensive line. When it's all said and done, they'll figure something out, whether he just comes in and they'll figure out a way to make it right, or they say, all right, Zach, cut the bullshit. Let's talk turkey. Let's figure this thing out, right? We'll see what happens. I talked about Nick Bosa not being at camp for the 49ers. Their GM, John Lynch, pretty much said, hey, yeah, Nick's not here. But we are talking to him. We are in negotiations, and we're going to try to get a deal done. It's going to be massive, whatever it is. It's going to be like on that Aaron Donald kind of level in terms of this deal, where you could be talking about $30 million per year on this thing. Like, Nick Bosa is that dude in the league. Him and TJ Watt are on another level. Like, in terms of pass rushers, it's those two, and then you skip about 3 or 4 spots, and then you can get to the rest of the league when you're talking about pass rushers. So I expect that bag to be robust, and I expect that bag to be imminent. So keep your eyes peeled for a massive deal there. I told you guys, deadline spur action. And now that teams are coming to camp, you're starting to see a lot of these conversations heat up and fast. Sticking with the 49ers, though, Bosa may not be at camp, but you know who is at camp, healthy, all systems go, which was a surprise? Brock Purdy. Their starting quarterback last year at the end of the season into the playoffs, who injured himself, tore up all kinds of ligaments in his elbow against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Didn't think he'd be ready this soon. The conversation for most 49ers fans after last season was he won't be ready for the first, 5-6 games of the season, probably have to start the season out on the PUP list. All right, Trey Lance, get ready. Let's see what you got. Now Brock Purdy is ready, and we've been hearing this all season. He's on pace to be ready for the start of camp. And here we are, start of camp, and he's fully ready. No restrictions, nothing holding him back. Wow, that's a hell of a recovery. It must be great to be young, number one. And number two, it's his job to lose. They've already made it abundantly clear. So we'll see what that means for Trey Lance. They were shopping him this offseason. Nobody was really interested. So, and they went out and signed Sam Darnold. So they have a veteran. So again, where does this leave Trey Lance? Don't know. But Brock Purdy is healthy. We'll see. I'm anxious to see what year 2 of Brock Purdy looks like. Can he offer up an encore to what he did last year? Because he kind of burst onto the scene, caught everybody off guard, and it was an unfortunate end to what was a very successful rookie campaign. The question now becomes, can he do it again? Can he do it again? I talked about this already. Marcus Peters signs a 1-year deal in Vegas to help that secondary out. So Raiders Inc. Marcus Peters. We'll see how that goes. And then this was a question. This was a question that I wanted to ask you guys. And I don't know if you heard this. I'm pretty sure you did. But did you guys hear that Bill Belichick's friends think that he is on the hot seat this year in New England? I find that to be very interesting. Now, I don't know if I necessarily believe it wholeheartedly, but I'm not going to just dismiss it. We had this whole conversation after the 2019 season, Brady's last in New England. Was it Brady or was it Belichick or was it both? And Brady left in 2020, immediately won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. Meanwhile, Belichick has struggled to make the postseason, only making it a postseason one time in the 3 years that Brady was not in New England. So the question now becomes, is Belichick capable of getting it done without an elite future first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback? And was it more Brady than Belichick? It's fascinating because I've never been a fan of Bill Belichick, the GM, which he has been essentially in New England for quite a long time. And they've never really been that good in the draft. What they've really excelled at was finding players on other teams that were casted away or were put in a box who, either been rejected by other teams or they've proven themselves to be quality NFL players, and the Patriots know what to do with them, i.e. Wes Welker, Danny Amendola. There's so many guys. What's my man's name? Oh, my gosh. I can't think of the damn linebacker's name that he shot. Kyle Van Noy, right? Failed in Detroit. They shined him up real nice in New England. Countless other players that they've either done that with or taken veteran players that you think, they might be past their prime. Adalius Thomas, Rodney Harrison, Junior Seau, and take those guys and clean them up. Corey Dillon, Randy Moss, and make them relive their prime again. You could look at it both ways, though. But was that more Brady? There are a lot of players that played their best football in New England, never played that type of football at that level again the remainder of their careers. Whether you're talking about one of those Brady backs, Shane Vereen, or Kevin Falk, or whomever, Danny Woodhead. You can go down the list of those Brady backs. Never had the success they had in New England, or the receivers for that matter. Branch and Givens, and Patton. We can go on and on and on. None of those guys really succeeded like they did in New England. So, maybe Belichick's time might be up. Maybe Robert Kraft is and you can't help but notice the deal that they gave to Gerard Mayo, who is the defensive coordinator in New England, or linebackers coach / defensive coordinator. That shit they like to do, not really give out concrete titles, making shit all kinds of muddled and murky. But that's a guy, Gerard Mayo, that other teams have been interested in, and New England has kept them at bay by making him the highest paid assistant coach in the league, or one of the highest paid. Everybody thinks he's the heir apparent there. I would assume Belichick would love to turn the thing over to his son, who was on that staff. That's an interesting dynamic in New England. One to keep an eye on. I don't think Belichick is going anywhere until he's ready, but I wouldn't assume anything. I wouldn't just dismiss the notion that Belichick could be on the outs in New England if they don't have a successful year this year. A lot of the moves that they've made, a lot of the money that they've spent hasn't been good money, and it hasn't really proven to be fruitful. They went out and they spent the most money of any team in the NFL in the offseason of 2021, I believe it was. Because when Brady left, they didn't have any money. So they pretty much sucked for an entire year. And they weren't as bad as everybody thought they were going to be, but they pretty much sucked for an entire year in 2020. And then 2021, they draft Mac Jones, and they spent all this money on talented players. So they thought, Nelson Aguilar and the receiver from the 49ers. They went out and got Hunter Henry. They went and got the other tight end from Tennessee. All of this bread that they went out and spent. They made it to the playoffs that year, but they didn't follow it up in 2022. So I don't know. We'll see. if there's any validity to this, I think Belichick is at the point of his career where he gets to call his shot as long as he doesn't overstay his welcome. I don't think they've been garbage enough to just push him out the door at this point. But if you get to a point where they're struggling and he doesn't want to leave, that's when you might have to press the button. But I don't think we're at a point where we have to press the button yet. They were a game out of making the playoffs, I think, last season. So I don't think we're at the point where a button needs to be pressed yet. But I could be wrong, man. I could be wrong. It was so much easier to get that message across, being an asshole, that Belichick can be, when you had Tom Brady and you knew you were going to win. It's a little different when that doesn't exist, but he's still Belichick. He's still one of the best to ever do it. So we'll see. Let's see what you guys have to say. I've said everything that I needed to say. Got a couple super chats. I'll take these and we'll get to any comments that you may have. If we got a little bit of time, we can chop it up for a little bit. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Le'Veon Bell tried to do the sit out, then watch James Conner play better in his absence. Then we know what happened to L. Bell when he got paid by the Jets. Exactly. And I felt like it was that era of backs that kind of messed it up for everyone else right now. It was the failed situations with Le'Veon Bell in New York with the Jets, Todd Gurley with the Rams, and how unsuccessful that contract was for the Rams and how it hampered and hamstrung them. I always felt like Zeke Elliott was solid, but I never felt like he lived up. Like, the best of Zeke Elliott was before he got the contract, not after, right? I felt like it was a series of moves made by teams, not named Tennessee, with Derrick Henry. And even Derrick Henry's contract was modest. He didn't get broken off like he probably should have for what he was doing and what he continued to do. But yeah, I think all of those situations kind of helped shape the running back market to where it is today, honestly speaking, And that's why sitting out doesn't help you, because you're giving an opportunity in a league that is predicated on being ready to seize the moment and being ready for any opportunity that may come your way. As a running back, you can ill afford to allow a guy to get an opportunity who's starving. You've already established yourself as a back in the league. You're making some money. This guy that's third on the depth chart, or this guy that's second on he's not guaranteed anything. He's starving for an opportunity to show that he belongs in the league. You get injured or you sit out an extra week or two, and this guy's chomping at the bit to get out there and he's running extra hard. That's one of those positions where it just sucks, man. It just sucks. As a Washington fan, I can tell you, how many times did we go through running backs and fans attach themselves to these basic ass backs like Fat Rob? Oh, he runs so hard. A lot of guys run so hard. We loved Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris was a basic ass back. Didn't have any top end speed. What Alfred did best was he was decisive. He got downhill and he broke tackles. You can find a lot of running backs who do that. Not everybody has that knack for being extremely physical and running through arm tackles and getting yards after contact. But where the real money is made is the ability to hit home runs and catch it out of the backfield. None of those Washington backs could really do that. The best one was Chris Thompson. So, and he wasn't even a home run threat. So, it's just amazing to see the de-evolution of the running back position. It's crazy to me. Johnny Boy 26. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Johnny Boy writes, can players use Madden overalls in contract talks? I don't know if they can or they can't. Why can't you? You can bring it up. You're damn right you can bring it up. Will it benefit you? I don't know. It's a game. But what that says is that I'm respected around not just the league, but the outward perception of what I bring to the table has been noticed. I'm not saying, I'm just saying Zach Martin didn't have a contract gripe, at least outwardly. We didn't know about it. Maybe the Cowboys had already been notified 3 months ago that he wasn't happy where he sat in the guard pantheon in the NFL. Maybe he had already made that abundantly clear to the organization. And if you guys don't sit down at the table with me at some point, we're going to have an issue come camp time. Maybe he had already made that clear. But I know this much. Once Madden released him as a 99 and he was a part of the 99 club, that's when we heard that he wasn't paid high enough and he had an issue and that he wasn't coming to camp if the Cowboys didn't want to talk to him. So I don't know. All I'm doing is connecting the dots, man. So I don't know if you can bring it up or not, but it doesn't hurt. I can assure you that it doesn't hurt. That's for damn sure. Let's see. See if we got any hashtags. So we got one here. Make sure there's nothing else here. Yeah. So we got this one from Red Wings 01, who writes, I find it a bit ironic that the league is transitioning to these 2 or even 3 back systems and fullbacks are seeing a bit of a renaissance, yet the perceived longevity of running backs is going down. It's not about the longevity necessarily, because I think that's a case to case basis, right? I think it's more about, see, you pay for things that you feel are worth it, right? The value. If something holds value to you, you're willing to pay for it. These teams aren't valuing these running backs, not because they're not talented, but because I can find someone who can give me similar production to what you're producing for me, which is why I harken back to the initial point that I made of you have to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield and be dynamic in doing so. You can no longer be Derrick Henry or Nick Chubb unless that team truly appreciates what you bring to the table and says, we're going to take care of you. And not all organizations view it that way. The Browns clearly said, we're going to take care of you. And they took care of Nick Chubb. And I think the Colts are going to take care of Jonathan Taylor. There's certain organizations that they believe in taking care of their players if they feel like they're worth it. And I think the Colts are going to take care of Jonathan Taylor, like the Titans took care of Derrick Henry, despite not being a prolific pass catcher, but realizing how dominant of a back he was and is still in the league. And so if you're not one of those guys, like Nick Chubb is like 6 yards a pop. I mean, he's insane. Nick Chubb is. Derrick Henry, we know what Derrick Henry's been, right? He's insane. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is going to have a big year this year to prove that he is worth it, because he wasn't the same guy last year that he was the year before. So he's going to have to do it again this year, show them I need to be paid, and I think he will get paid. But if you truly want to make it a no contest, like where there's no conversation, you got to be able to catch the football. And to your point, having these 2- and 3-headed backfields diminish your value. Because if I'm going to pay you, I should be able to use you on all 3 downs. No equivocations. And that's not what we're seeing anymore. Red Wing says, like, I understand that it shows just how replaceable, interchangeable they are, but isn't the point of these multi-back systems to preserve their backs in increasing their service life? But see, that's the thing is, in doing that, what the team has done is it has diminished your value. So if you're splitting time with another back, yeah, it may be prolonging your career, but it also means I can find another guy to split time, right? Like, I don't have to pay you. Even if you're dynamic, I can find another guy. Think of it like this, all right? Is Antonio Gibson's value greater if he would have matured into that 1,000-yard rusher, but also continued to keep the pass catching ability that he had coming out of college as a receiver at Memphis? If he were able to, he was a 1,000-yard rusher in his second season. He was a touchdown maker in his rookie season. And I thought he was like a little bit of everything, but he was nothing special in his third season last year, right? Because of the emergence of Brian Robinson. Is he better off just being the pass catching threat of a dual backfield where Brian Robinson takes the load and he's just the guy that's catching it? Or is his value greater if he's doing both? You see what I'm saying? I can replace you if your job is to just catch it out of the backfield. I can find another guy in college that's a dynamic pass catcher out of the backfield. Or if I have a power back like Derrick Henry, like the Browns, for instance, they love Nick Chubb. They don't feel like you can just find another, and you can't. Nick Chubbs are hard to find. Like Derrick Henrys are hard to find. But you know what they felt like we could find? We can find another Kareem Hunt. We can find another other back, the other guy, whether he's speed or just to change of pace, or he's similar to Chubb, but he's not Chubb. We can find another one of those. It's hard to find a Nick Chubb. So you got to make it so I'm irreplaceable. And most backs aren't that anymore. Unfortunately, they're not. And that's where the disconnect, like Austin Eckler's like, I'm Austin Eckler. You know what I've done for this offense? And the Chargers are like, yeah, but we think we can find another Austin Eckler, Austin. And he's like, the hell you can. Ain't nobody else doing the shit that I do. And he's not wrong. Find me backs that are catching 100 balls a year. There ain't many of those in the league. But that's the state of the NFL. So it makes sense that these 2 and 3 backfield rotations are preserving them. But what it also makes it feel like is you're interchangeable. If I like the old adage, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you got none, right? If you got 2 or 3 running backs, then you don't have a guy. That's what that's viewed as. I think that's part of the reason the Vikings got rid of Dalvin Cook. They looked at him and they said, bro, we're increasingly getting comfortable playing Alexander Madison. We're finding ourselves feeling very comfortable just going with the quote unquote backup running back. Well, so let's just go with him. We can draft another guy to back him up and we can just keep cycling y'all out. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, that's kind of where it is right now. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Ravi. Jimmy Graham. Did y'all see Jimmy Graham is back? I didn't think that was going to happen. Jimmy Graham is 36 years old. He signed a 1-year contract with the New Orleans Saints. Doesn't mean he's going to make the team, but that's a statement. Like Jimmy sat out a year, probably got his body feeling good again, just like Gronk did. And he feels like I can still do this at a high level. So we'll see. I'm actually interested to see what Jimmy looks like, because towards the end of his career, Jimmy was looking like an old man, right? Them feet didn't come up as high as they used to. Jimmy ain't get up as high as he used to. Jimmy won't separate at all. Jimmy's always going to be 6'7", 6'8", though. That shit never changes. So anyway, I digress. Red Wings says, you're right. Unless your name is Derrick Henry, you need to be a dual threat. And that and Chubb is included in that conversation, but that's the problem. You know how dominant Derrick Henry, was? He rushed for 2,000 yards. Like, that doesn't happen very often. You know how dominant he had to be? And technically, he still didn't really, bust the Titans over the head like he probably should have. Anyway. Red Wings 01 says, not going to lie, part of me wants to extend Gibby if he plays well. He's not the perfect running back, but he still has an incredible skill set and has tons more room to grow. Absolutely. Facts. I want him to play well this year because it's not going to cost you a whole hell of a lot, right? That's the easy value in bringing back a back that you like. Look at J.D. McKissick, for instance. We love J.D. J.D. got a 2-year, $6 million deal last offseason to come back to Washington when he was going to Buffalo. 2 years, $6 million. That's it. For a guy that we loved. Granted, there were issues with injuries and concerns there, and we see that his career is probably over due to the neck. But if Antonio balls this year, it's not going to be much more than, I'd say, a 3-year, $18 million deal or something. Something you would pay like a rotational guard or a starting lower level starting offensive lineman. That doesn't break the bank. You can do that. So we'll see what happens. All right. Keith Henry writes, so now the NFL are treating our running backs like yellow truck drivers. Are we headed towards a pass league only? Well, I showed you what Derrick Henry said. If that's how you feeling, just take the running backs out of the game then. You don't want to pay us. Our value isn't great. You don't think you need us? All right, get rid of us then altogether. And teams aren't saying we don't need running backs. We're saying we don't need to pay you, right? We don't need to pay you an exorbitant amount of money. We want the running backs in the league. We love the Isaiah Pacheco's, the 7th-round picks that don't cost us a lot of money. We love those guys. We don't love the Clyde Edwards-Helaire's that we picked in the 1st round who's looking to get the 5th-year option picked up. We don't want him. And I don't blame them. It's not like he's been killing it and staying healthy and all those things, but that's what they want. They want the 7th rounder. They want the undrafted guy. Alfred Morris had 2,000 or 3,000 yard seasons in a row for Washington to start his career. Now, by the end of his, rookie contract in Washington, things had changed. If Shanahan were still there, maybe he would have remained there. Probably not, because as we saw with the Shanahans, what did they do with running backs? They didn't pay them. They just went and got the next one. They traded Clinton Portis after 2 1,500-yard seasons to start his career. They traded Clinton Portis and said, hey, we'll let Mike Anderson run the rock and get 1,000 yards. We'll go draft Tatum Bell, who was a Clinton Portis clone who never lived up to the hype. We'll find somebody else to run the rock. Trust me. So, anyway. Red Wing 01 says, I think the emergence of the mobile quarterback has also played into running backs losing their market value, which doesn't get talked about enough. I don't know if that does or not, because I feel like that helps the running back. Like, does Miles Sanders get the deal he just got in Carolina if not for Jalen Hurts being a run threat and opening up massive holes for Miles Sanders? You know why the Eagles let him go? Is part of what you're saying, which is, bro, we can find anybody to run alongside Jalen. Jalen's going to help you with the run game. Our offensive line is going to help you. But the Panthers said, hey, we like this kid. We like what we saw, and we're going to bring him to Carolina. We're going to pay him some money. So I felt like the mobile quarterback helped him get paid. Now, it could diminish, to your point, it could diminish the value of a running back. Like the Eagles were thinking, nah, we're not paying you, bro. We could stick anybody next to Jalen in this offense with Jalen Hurts' legs and him being a threat as a runner. Nah, we can stick anybody in this offense and get production out of the running back position. Deuces. You go get your bread somewhere else. The Ravens have done that for years, but they've also drafted running backs too, right? But I don't recall them ever really paying anybody. You alongside Lamar Jackson, you should be able to run the football. So they just keep drafting these dudes, churning these backs out, getting guys out of nowhere to come in and be good, like Gus Edwards. So there could be a element of that being included into it that nobody talks about. But I mean, if you're dynamic, you're dynamic. We'll see what Travis Etienne ends up being in Jacksonville next to Trevor Lawrence. We'll see what the Bears end up doing. You see, they just let their running back walk, who I loved, right, in Montgomery, but he was also oft injured. That's probably part of the reason it was like, nah, we good. But they probably think anybody can run next to Justin. We'll see. We'll see. All right, so now let's finish up the show with garbage time. So got a couple of items for you today. The first of which is the quarterback series. Remember, we talked about this. We broke down the quarterback series. It was riveting stuff, critically acclaimed. It was 2 weeks in a row, number 1 on Netflix. It's now number 2 on Netflix. So it's something that I was like, man, I wouldn't mind seeing it again. And just like that, ask and you shall receive. Netflix has already picked up season 2 of Quarterback. I told you, anything Peyton Manning touches usually turns to gold. That series was absolutely fantastic. And so I said, man, I wouldn't mind seeing this series again. Well, we are going to see it again. The question now becomes, who are the 3 quarterbacks? Who are some of the quarterbacks you would like to see? So I told you, you got to do it in tiers like they did. They did low level, which was Marcus Mariota, mid level, which was Kirk Cousins, and then elite. I think you have to do it in tiers that way, because if not, you run out of elite quarterbacks doing it that way. If you get 3 elite quarterbacks, it's because I'm not watching, like most people aren't going to watch. Like if that series didn't have Mahomes on it, if it was just, let's say if it was just Andy Dalton, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota, diehards like me and you might have still watched. But the casual fan might have said, nah, I'm good. Mahomes was the draw. That's what brought you in. And Kirk to a lesser degree. But like if they didn't have Marcus Mariota, and I enjoyed his portion of the show, but if they didn't have him, they still would have did big numbers without him. I think people were polarized with Kirk Cousins as well, too. I thought he did a great job of carrying the show as well. And it just so happened they picked the perfect year to follow him. The Vikings have the 3rd best record in the NFC. They have the largest comeback in NFL history. And they were in one of the wildest games I've ever watched in my life. That Bills game with the Vikings, the crazy Justin Jefferson grab on 4th and 15, the Kirk Cousins not getting in on the quarterback sneak, the subsequent fumble by Josh Allen in the end zone, like that whole overtime as well, thinking that, oh man, Josh Allen is about to do these boys. And, Kirk and company go down, get a field goal. Allen comes back and he throws the pick. Like that's riveting stuff. I remember watching that game with my dad thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. The Vikings were on the verge of getting blown out and they somehow won that game. They picked the perfect year to follow Kirk Cousins. But I said all of that to say this. That series was carried by the presence of Patrick Mahomes. So you need an elite quarterback. And if you do all 3 elite quarterbacks, that's great for that season. But what happens when you run out of elite quarterbacks? So you have to spread it out. Because if you have one elite quarterback, they're going to watch the other ones, is what I'm saying. So this year, one of the cat got out of the bag. One of the quarterbacks that was approached to be on this show was Justin Fields. And Justin Fields said, no, I'm good. He turned them down. And he cited the reason being, I don't want the distraction of cameras following me around everywhere in the building to disrupt the rhythm and the dynamic that we've created in the locker room right now. I love it. I love the answer. I would have also have loved to have seen him on the show, but I get it. What's more important? Because these opportunities will be there. They'll come. If you succeed in the league, All the endorsements, all the off the field opportunities will be right there at your beck and call, right? You win and you produce, and all the other shit comes flooding to you, which is why some of these players don't understand it. They try to get to all of that endorsements and extracurricular stuff too fast. Win, and all this shit will come to you. Trust me. Especially if you're a quarterback. So Justin Fields turned him down, but I like the mindset. I like that they were going after Fields. He would classify as a low-level quarterback, but a young one that you would love to see, right? I'm going to be interested to see who they're able to get. What matters most is who is the top shelf quarterback. You got to be able to get a Josh Allen, a Joe Burrow. I really want to see Joe Burrow. If I'm them, that's the guy I go after. He's got a personality. The Bengals are in the AFC Championship every single year. That's the guy I'm going after this year. You know, and then you find you a mid-tier quarterback. How about Derek Carr? You know, pushed aside out of Vegas. He's in a new building now in New Orleans. I don't know if they'll be, you know, interested, but similar background to Kirk Cousins, a Christian, you know, all of that good jazz. He'd be the perfect mid-tier quarterback for them to follow around. And then find you a low-level quarterback. I'll see. I will see what happens. Anyway, I also want to show you guys this. So we've been talking about new helmets and things of that nature. Broncos just released their snow-capped helmet for the upcoming season. So you'll see this at some point. What do you think about this helmet from the Denver Broncos? This all-white helmet with the throwback logo, which is one of the to me, one of the crispiest NFL logos ever created. When I used to play Madden, if I played with Denver, I was always putting on the Orange Crush because the logo was just so dope. What do you think? Dope ass helmet, or nah, I'm good, or kind of indifferent? That shit's fire to me. I want to see what they wear with it and how they freak it, but that shit is fire to me. And so I think what we've seen this year, last year, the black helmets were all the rage. Everybody wanted a black helmet, right? That was what we saw all that. The Cardinals had a black helmet, and we were like, oh, some of these teams don't need a black helmet. But everybody wanted one last year. This year, and I think the Bengals, everybody was going, you know, right, and the Bengals said, I'm going to make a sharp left turn on y'all ass, and we're going to do white. And that shit was so goddamn cold-blooded, right? It was so cold that everybody was like, yo, that Bengals shit was nasty. So now everybody's pivoted from the black helmet to the white helmet this year. So we've already seen, now Indy, while everybody's trying to make that sharp left, Indy's like, let me go right, and we're going to go get the black helmet. I'm like, I don't know about that. But we've already seen a white helmet now from Denver, from Cleveland. I think there was one more white helmet that we talked about on this show. But we're seeing more of these white helmets. What do you think about this one? I think this one is pretty dope. I personally like it, but what says you out there? Miss Perry says, it's all right. The Bengals' white uniform and helmet was fire. That's why I said I want to see what uniform they wear with it, because it could accentuate the helmet. Even if they wore, you know, just the throwback Orange Crush uniforms with that, it still would be fire, I think. But what would set it off is white, you know, all white. You know, white on white on white. Red Wing says, I like it. Door Gunner says, I am glad the Bucks are bringing back the old creamsicle. I saw those. They're always fire. But you know, the Titans are bringing back the old Oilers, the Love Ya Blues. Ooh-wee. Seahawks are bringing back the old Kingdom joints. Oh my God. So it's going to be a lot of freaky, nasty, vicious, flavor, delicious throwbacks this year. I just hope none of those teams rock those joints against us. We play Denver this year. We play the Seahawks. I've already found out when they're wearing theirs because I wanted to make sure it wasn't us. It's not us, so I'm not tripping. But we play Denver. We play Cleveland. We play Seattle. Don't put on your crispy threads against us. Save that for somebody else. Don't put them shits on and give the fans and the players an even bigger adrenaline boost. Nah, keep that shit to yourself. I don't need it. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on the 351st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Thursday when we'll be back talking about the National Football League in all of its splendor. Until then, you guys take care. God bless. Good night. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
LouieTeeNetwork.